Hey, this is Glover Teixeira, UFC light heavyweight champion.
Hi, I'm Robbie Lawler.
What's up, fight family? This is your favorite MMA coach, Thiago Alves, the Pitbull.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Pedro Munoz.
This is Mike Brown.
Guys, I am Hayisaer and welcome.
And welcome.
And welcome.
And welcome.
And this is We Want Picks.
And you're watching We Want Picks.
To We Want Picks.
We Want Picks.
To We Want Picks.
To We Want Picks. Hi everybody from American Top.
My name's Angelo, and welcome to We Want Picks. We're coming off the heels of an awesome UFC Vegas 56. I hit almost every single one of my bets. The picks were solid, and we are hoping to repeat that success here for UFC 275. I'm going to break down the entire fight card. I'm going to give you my picks and my bets. And if you want $50 free, we give you $50 for free. Anybody who goes to wewantpicks.com/bets, signs up with any one of our 5 betting partners and makes a deposit. We have 5 partners. They all offer their own bonuses, their own promos. And then on top of that, we give you $50. Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, however you want it at wewantpicks.com/bets. And this would be a pretty fun fight card, the first ever numbered UFC in Singapore. And opening up the card, we have Joselyne Edwards taking on Ramona Pascual. Joselyne Edwards is a good kickboxer who uses range really well. She has a nice variety of strikes, but she does prefer to kick. If you can get inside and make it a dirty fight, you can break Edwards, but getting inside her range is not the easiest thing to do. She has an okay strike differential of 3.5 to 3, but her biggest hole is her grappling. She has 16% takedown offense and only a 47% takedown defense. Ramona Pascual's coming back after a short notice fight against Joselyne Nunes, where she was getting beat up early, but she was able to work in some well-timed takedowns for some control later. She's really big for this weight class and has fought all the way from 135 pounds all the way up to 150 pounds, and she might use that size advantage to bully in this fight. Style-wise, she's a Muay Thai fighter with a traditional Muay Thai guard and traditional Muay Thai techniques. Earlier in her career, she sort of struggled with takedowns and grappling, but she seems to have plugged those holes. And right now, Ramona is a plus 145 underdog, and I think I really like her in this spot. She was able to survive Nunes's early power, showed how tough she was. Then she worked in 3 takedowns and almost 4 minutes of control time, and that was a fight where she was a massive underdog, and nobody even thought she had any chance whatsoever. Joselyne has nowhere near the same power that Joselyne does, and I think Ramona can have success with her own Muay Thai, as well as some grappling. So I like Ramona to strike, then pressure forward, use her size advantage, bully this to the ground, and I think she'll have a very clear advantage once she gets down there. So right out of the gate, I'm going an underdog, and this card is just loaded with live underdogs, and I think Ramona Pascual is one of them. Listen, betting-wise, I don't know if I'm going to go as far as a money line, but I do like a plus 3.5. If you don't know what a plus 3.5 is, you basically buy one single round on the judge's scorecard. So if Ramona wins one round in real life, and then I bought another round with the sports book, all of a sudden I win my bet, I get paid out. So I don't need her to win the fight. I just need her to win one round and not get stopped. And I think she could absolutely do that. You are only going to get that bet if you go to wewantpicks.com/bets. We have 5 partners. BetOnline is the one partner that offers that bet, and depending when you're watching this video, they usually drop that bet on like Tuesdays. So if you're watching it Sunday or Monday, it's not available yet, but just keep checking back. If you sign up, we'll send you $50. Then we move right along to Silvana Gomez Juarez, and she's taking on Liang. Silvana Gomez Juarez is 0-2 in the UFC. She's coming off 2 grappling heavy losses. She's a striker, but she likes to use her reach to keep people on the outside of her strikes. She has genuine power in her hands and throws very heavy leg kicks. She's coming off a submission loss to Demopoulos, but she wasn't taken down. Juarez absolutely blasted Vanessa in the face, dropped her, but then she followed Vanessa to the mat and was ultimately submitted down there. Her power is very real. The submission and takedown defense, however, is not. Liang is only 25 years old and already has 24 fights, but if you look a little closer, you'll see that it's sort of a padded record for the most part. any of the real names in there were losses. Style-wise, she is a relentless wrestler with takedowns, but she doesn't have much of a game plan outside of that. She's a threat to dominate with wrestling, but regardless of what her record says, she isn't necessarily a threat for a submission or a ground and pound TKO. This is another hard fight to pick. The odds have Juarez as a minus 160 favorite, but I'm surprised because styles make fights, and we know that Juarez cannot defend a takedown. Lupita Godinez took her down 5 times in 4 minutes. I can only imagine what Liang can do with her aggressive takedowns. On the other hand, we just watched Na Liang get 3 takedowns against Carnelozzi, but then she lost a scramble and then was stopped in the second round. So this is a really tough fight to pick because Silvana Gomez gets taken down, no problem. Na Liang does nothing but take people down, but she's got some questionable wins on her record and some questions around her toughness. So this is really hard. My gut is saying Juarez because of how deadly her striking is, but my brain is saying Na Liang because of the grappling. I'm going to go with the brain on this pick. I think Na Liang can probably get those takedowns and then win from there, but don't bet on this fight. There's too many variables. There's nothing to gain by throwing money at this fight, so just watch and enjoy. Then we have Kyung Ho Kang taking on Bagharai Danaa. Kyung Ho Kang is a well-rounded fighter who uses his range to keep you at distance when he wants, and then he works his range really well to get inside and work takedowns from there. He averages about 2.5 takedowns per fight, and he has a solid accuracy of 59%. He is primarily a grappler with top-heavy pressure and solid submissions, but he can hang in the striking as well. Danaa Bagharai, or Bagharai Danaa, is a very good striker who comes forward with volume, speed, and power. His speed is his biggest asset. If you look at his striking differential, he lands about 2-to-1. He couples that speed with power, and he's a legit threat on his feet. His takedown defense is just okay at 57%, but he does scramble really well to create openings and get back to his feet. This is another interesting fight. We have 2 talented guys with very different paths to victory. Danaa has legit power and great speed, but he can be stoppage or bust. Kang has technical striking and solid grappling, but he can struggle with pressure. And I'm having a really hard time with this pick as well. I want to go with Kang because of the grappling, but his last performance worries me. And Danaa actually showcased some grappling in his last fight. So I think I'm taking a chance here. I'm going to go Kang. I think I'm 3 underdogs right out of the gate. I'm going to go Kang. He is a very, very durable guy. And I think Danaa might get frustrated if he doesn't get that stoppage early and then tired after the first round. Not to mention he's probably coming back a little too soon after his knockout loss to Chris Gutierrez. That's Danaa. So I'm going Kang here. And again, I'm leaning on the heavy grappler. But Danaa Bagharai, the stand-up is deadly, and we definitely need to watch out for that. Then we've got Fialho doing another very quick turnaround that he's taking on Jake Matthews. And Jake Matthews is coming back after about a year layoff. He's a well-rounded guy with solid wrestling, very good grappling, and a nice variety of strikes. He works angles well and has no problem mixing up body shots and headshots. He averages almost 2 takedowns per fight, but the dig on him is his fight IQ and his willingness to trade punches when he should wrestle or grapple when he should strike. Fialho is becoming the post-COVID Khamzat Chimaev with his really quick turnarounds and his willingness to fight anybody. He's a striker with a nice double jab, heavy leg kicks, and solid takedowns when he needs them. He has legit power in his hands, and he showcased that in his last 2 fights with back-to-back first-round knockouts over Miguel Baeza and Cameron Van Camp. He will mix up inside and outside leg kicks, and he uses them really well. His issue, though, is his defense needs some work. He's very hittable, and against Michel Pereira in his UFC debut, if you go back and watch his PFL fights, he's hit there as well. He's very, very hittable if he's not knocking people out. So solid power, but his striking defense could use a little bit of work. And it's an interesting fight because I'm not as high on Fialho as most people are. I mentioned how hittable he is, and that's going to catch up to him. Michel Pereira doubled his strikes. Cameron Van Camp even outlanded him in that first round knockout. And if you go back to the PFL, Chris Curtis lights him up there as well. I wanted to pick against him here too. And stylistically, I think if Jake sticks to a wrestling plan, he could absolutely get the takedowns and have success. The problem is Jake's fight IQ. I mentioned earlier, he strikes when he should grapple. He grapples when he should strike. And right now I'm going Fialho. I'm going against my gut on this one again. I might change my mind post weigh-ins, but I got to go with Fialho here. He's been more active. He's shown how deadly he is. He is on a streak. But if Jake Matthews wrestle, and sticks to that, he can absolutely have some success. Then we have Maheshate, and I'm just going to go with Maheshate because that's how he's listed everywhere. His first name just doesn't exist on most of the internet, and he's taking on Steve Garcia. Maheshate is only 22 years old and only has 7 fights, but he has the composure of a veteran. He's coming off a Dana White Contender Series win where he was a plus 1,000 betting underdog. He was dropped early in that fight, but he still became the first ever Chinese fighter to win a contract. Style-wise, he's a fun, creative striker who can hang in a firefight or dance the outside in a technical kickboxing match. He mixes in traditional mixed martial arts techniques like side kicks with flashy ones like spinning or step-in elbows. If you let him dictate the pace, you can have a long night, but if you stay in his face, you can have some success getting to his chin. Steve Garcia was a featherweight for his entire career, but he's moved up to lightweight for the UFC. He's a solid grappler with good takedowns and decent boxing. He likes to come forward with big strikes that sets up his grappling, and then he likes to work control from there. Steve has been really vocal that he's going to keep the pressure on in this fight and not give Maheshate any room to breathe, and I'm confident he's going to do that, and I'm confident he's going to work in his grappling. I think this is a tricky fight, but I also think Steve has a very clean path to victory here with that grappling. Steve should win. He literally said, I'm going to exploit this guy's low number of fight, his amount of experience, his age. I'm going to push the pace, and I'm going to stay in his face. But if Steve wants to engage in the striking, he might have some issues, but I'm going with Steve Garcia here. And he may be a solid money line bet as well because these odds are fairly close and they are worlds apart in the grappling and worlds apart as far as experience is concerned. Then we've got Seung Choi coming back after that Alex Caceres loss, and he's taking on Josh Culibao. Seung Choi is a very good, clean striker. He fights tall and throws solid with power. He does a very good job utilizing leg kicks and at times uses them like a jab. He's a technical striker who sets up his takedowns well, and he uses them to clinch rounds, to win rounds late. Josh Culibao is a solid striker who is aggressive and, for the most part, pretty tough. He throws heat, and he's always live for a knockout. He's also willing to fight dirty, and I don't mean like cheating dirty. I mean fight a dirty inside the pocket fight. He has no problem making it ugly, and you can see that with his negative striking differential. He will just get in the pocket, take whatever he gets, and then just start throwing from there. He's not much of a grappler, though, and while he has solid takedown defense at 86%, he is 0 for 4 on offensive takedown attempts in the UFC. I like Choi in this fight. I think he can keep it technical, avoid that phone booth brawl, and cruise to a solid striking showcase win. Josh's power will definitely have me and other people nervous, but I expect Choi to be able to avoid the big strikes, avoid the brawl, keep it technical, and work in a takedown or two to solidify a decision and steal those rounds. Then we have the featured prelim of the night. We've got Brendan Allen taking on Jacob Malkoun. Brendan Allen is a BJJ black belt with solid low kicks, solid takedowns, and much improved striking overall. He just dropped and then submitted a very durable Sam Alvey. He moved to Sanford MMA a few camps ago, and you can see those improvements. Historically, his game plan was grappling, right? He'd get the takedown, he'd be very tough on top, and then he'd work from there. But at some point in the last year and a half, he turned into a striker with mixed results. I mentioned the Alvey knockdown, but he was also knocked out by Chris Curtis before that. Similar to Brendan Allen, Jacob Malkoun is a grappler who prefers to strike. He likes to plot forward and throw everything with power. Because of this, all of his punches are looping. Even his jab just isn't straight up the middle. It's got a little bit of loop to it, and he sends it with a lot of power. He steps into everything, which can leave him open for takedowns, but it does add some sting to his strikes. He's a capable wrestler who lowers his level and times his shots really well. Most of his shots are clean and in the middle of the cage, which works out well for him. Right now, the odds have Brendan Allen as a minus 240 favorite. I think those are wide. On paper, yes, he just beat Sam Alvey, but watch that fight. He looked awful doing that. He was hit early. He was hit pretty often, and it actually looked like Sam Alvey was going to win by stoppage. And then ultimately Brendan Allen landed that shot, jumped on top, and then got the submission. And honestly, if that is the Brendan Allen that shows up on Saturday, then I think Jacob Malkoun gets it done. But it's just so hard to know which Brendan Allen you're going to get. He outstruck Punahil Soriano and looked great doing it. He outgrappled Kevin Holland and looked great doing it. But then he got stopped by Chris Curtis, and he looked terrible against Sam Alvey. And I feel like I'm picking too many underdogs on this card, and I hate knowing what the betting odds are because that absolutely influences people's picks. But, I mean, this is just... I think I trust Jacob Malkoun here. I think I trust him to get the takedowns. He took down Abdul Razak Al-Hassan 8 times, AJ Dobson 6 times, and I think my pick is Malkoun. Again, betting-wise, when the odds are this wide, you don't need to go for just straight money line. I think Jacob Malkoun at plus 3.5 is probably the best play here. I think his grappling is just as good, if not better, than Brendan Allen's. His wrestling, I don't know, takedown for takedown, Malkoun is levels above Brendan Allen. Maybe if it was a wrestling match, it'd be different, but frankly, I trust Malkoun to do it. You don't need to go money line bet here. I like this as another 3.5. I mentioned it earlier. All Jacob Malkoun needs to do is win one single round on the judges' scorecard, and I win the bet. You're only going to get that bet if you go to WeWantPicks.com/bets. We have 5 partners. BetOnline is the one and only partner that offers a buy a round bet. So all I need Malkoun to do is win one round with his wrestling. He's probably not going to get submitted here. Obviously, Brendan Allen has showcased a little bit of striking lately. That's the real risk, but if Malkoun wins one round, I win my bet. WeWantPicks.com/bets. BetOnline is the only one that offers that bet. Sign up, make a deposit. I will send you $50. Then we've got Jack Della Maddalena, and he's taking on Ramazan Emeev. Jack Maddalena, he's coming off a solid win in his UFC debut, but let's not forget that his opponent that he beat in his UFC debut only had 4 fights. And he was absolutely nowhere near ready for the UFC or that fight against Jack. Jack's a solid striker with an interesting style. He plots forward on his toes with a really nice step-in jab. And then if his opponents respond, like they throw their own jab back, he takes big steps backward, completely resets, and then he just restarts that cycle. He does have deceiving power, though, where strikes that look like setups or jabs end up rocking and in some cases finishing his opponents. Almost like a Sean Strickland in that regard. He's got solid takedown defense, but his offensive takedowns can use some work. Ramazan Emeev is a very well-rounded fighter. He is a solid kickboxer who will chain wrestle when needed. He averages more than 2 takedowns per fight, but his accuracy is low at 29%. And you've heard me say this a million times. That's because of the chain wrestling. So he'll take a shot. He's not going to get his first takedown. He'll transition to the second, transition to the third, and then eventually get that takedown. But he never broke the first entry, right? He's not taking a shot, missing it, standing up, starting over. It's one shot and then a bunch of transitions until he finally gets it to the ground, never giving his opponent the chance to sort of regroup. Despite the Dagestani heritage, I'd say he might honestly be more of a kickboxer than a grappler, but his ability to flow between the two is very impressive. He doesn't have a ton of power, but he does have enough cardio to keep a pace for a full 15 minutes. This entire fight comes down to Jack's takedown defense. That's it. Because when Ramazan gets takedowns, he dominates. But when he can't, like when he went 2 for 7 against Danny Roberts or 0 for 9 against Anthony Rocco Martin, he looks desperate, and the judges absolutely hate that. I hate that I like so many underdogs on this freaking card. It's like, it's concerning me. I'm either going to look like an absolute genius this week or just go down in flames. But, especially coming off the heels of UFC 56, 14 fights, only 2 underdogs won. But I think Emeev gets this done. He flows really well between his striking and his wrestling, and I genuinely think he gets those takedowns. If you watch Jack Della or Jack Maddalena versus Glenn Pettigrew, Glenn was able to work in takedowns, and he doesn't have anywhere near Emeev's takedowns or his cardio. He was gassed and still took Maddalena down. I like Emeev here. I fully recognize that Jack Maddalena has very real power, solid enough footwork to stay on the outside. But I think Ramazan Emeev can get it done. And we've got 2 bets that we can do here. That plus 3.5 that I've been talking about for the last hour and a half. Or this fight goes the distance. I do think this fight goes the distance. Ramazan Emeev is incredibly durable and not a finisher. So if he loses, he can survive. And if he wins, that will be by decision. So I like fight does go the distance here or the over on rounds, whichever one gives you better odds. So I'm definitely going to explore that. Then we've got Rogerio Bontorin taking on Manel Kape. Rogerio Bontorin's a well-rounded grappler who has heavy punches and throws with intent, but it's mostly there to set up that grappling. His grappling is very good. He has solid pressure on top and is very controlled. He'll plot, he'll take his time, he'll work from one position to another, and he does all of this while keeping pressure and throwing strikes from top. He can absolutely submit anybody on the ground, but he does take his time and can fall behind on those scorecards. He's coming off a split decision loss to Brandon Royval where he had 8 takedowns, almost 8 minutes of control time, but he landed half the strikes that Royval did. Manel Kape is a fast and explosive striker who has no issues chasing knockouts. He's a southpaw with good pressure, and he bounces in and out of range really well. He's a decent wrestler when he needs to be, and he closes distance really well when he wants to. He's very fun to watch, but at times he's having too much fun and he makes fight IQ fight-changing mistakes. This should be a fun fight, and it's another close one with clear paths to victory for each fighter. If Bontorin can keep the grappling pace like he did against Royval, he can have some real success here, but if he's chasing and not setting things up well, he can get KO'd the exact same way that Zalgas did. I do like Manel here, and I think his 80% takedown defense will hold up. The other thing to consider here is that if you look at the Holly Holm fight and just last night, the Jeff Molina decision, judges lately seem to be favoring, or not favoring control time or wrestlers who get takedowns and do nothing with them. So even if Rogerio is able to hold Manel against the cage or work in a takedown, the judges don't seem to really care unless you do something with that takedown or do something with the control. Either way, I do think this is a close fight. Manel is super live for a knockout. Bontorin's super live for some takedowns here, but I am going to go Manel Kape here. He seems to have found his rhythm and hit his stride in the UFC. Then we've got Zhang Weili taking on Joanna Jędrzejczyk in a rematch of one of the most exciting fights I have ever seen. If you don't remember that fight, it was a wild back and forth striking match where almost 400 strikes were landed, and Joanna's swelled up worse than I've ever seen before and ever. It was a razor-thin fight that, according to the judges, Weili won, but I actually think Joanna won that fight. And I think the swollen forehead, she looked like a grapefruit growing. It was ridiculous. She looked like an alien. It was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. Anyway, I think that impacted the judge's decision because Joanna landed more strikes, had higher accuracy, and the control time was even though Weili had a takedown. Zhang Weili is a striker, but more of a boxer than a kickboxer. She's coming off back-to-back losses to Rose, but they were very different. The first loss was a very quick KO, and the second was a much closer fight where Weili looked very good. She added wrestling to her game plan and working in 5 takedowns in that fight. She ended up losing because she lost 2 scrambles and ended up on bottom, but Weili has a ton of power, incredible volume, and is now an incredibly well-rounded fighter. Joanna Jędrzejczyk is a phenomenal striker, and some people still consider her this division's GOAT. She has an insane 2-to-1 striking differential and an 81% takedown defense over 14 fights in the UFC. She has wins over current champion Carla Esparza, Michelle Waterson, Claudia Gadelha, Tecia Torres, Jessica Andrade, and she has never lost a non-title fight. She's coming back after a 2-year layoff, and her last win was all the way back in 2019 against Michelle Waterson. But the most impressive part about that win is she worked in her own grappling. She had 3 takedowns and tripled Michelle's strikes. This is another close fight. When I first saw it listed, I immediately said, Weili wins this fight because of her striking, her improved grappling, and the fact that she has been active. But then you start looking a little closer, and Joanna has the better wins. Joanna has much more experience at this level. Joanna arguably won the first fight, and now I'm seeing this fight much closer than I originally had it. I think I'm still going to stick with Weili here, though, and I really do think the activeness makes a difference. 2 years away is a very long time, and striking timing is something that comes with actual fighting. And even though they were losses, Weili has been in the cage, working in takedowns, working her striking, continuing to move forward. And after the first Rose loss, she went back, she retooled, she made improvements, she made adjustments. After Joanna lost her belt, she fired her nutrition team, blamed the weight cut, pointed at everybody else, and then disappeared. It's very different approaches. Very different approaches. It's impossible to know what 2 years away is going to look like. I'm very excited for this fight. I think it's going to be an extremely, extremely well-fought fight, but I do think Zhang Weili takes the win again. Then we have the actual women's GOAT. We have Valentina Shevchenko taking on Taila Santos in her 7th title defense. Valentina Shevchenko is one of the best fighters on the planet, regardless of division or gender. She won the belt in 2018 and has defended it 6 times since then. She's a phenomenal striker, very good grappler, and has true champion composure and mindset. Her striking is the best in any division. She's very technical and has enough power combined with technique that she is putting people away. The last few years, we've seen her game evolve, though. She's mixed in takedowns much more. She has 18 takedowns in her last 4 fights, and all of them were against opponents that she could have outstruck. She just chose to grapple with them. She's catching kicks, transitioning to a takedown, ducking looping shots, and transitioning to the takedown. She is a complete fighter and can do anything, anywhere, to anyone except Nunes. Taila Santos is also a striker, but a very different one, where Shevchenko is the technical and diverse striker. Taila is the powerful, athletic, and willing to slug it out striker. She's coming off her first stoppage win in the UFC, but it is her 14th stoppage win overall. Not only is her boxing fantastic, though, her grappling is as well. She averages almost 2.5 takedowns per fight with an impressive 86% takedown accuracy and an even more impressive 88% takedown defense. If you look at her fight against Molly McCann, she took her down 5 times because she was aware enough to know that Molly has very good striking, and she might need that same game plan against Shevchenko. And anytime Shevchenko fights, you're going to see some wild odds. Right now, she's sitting as a minus 700 favorite. That translates to an 88% probability, meaning the bookies think that Shevchenko wins this fight pretty much 9 out of 10 times. And it's very hard to disagree with that. But I will say, I think Taila Santos is one of the most dangerous opponents that Shevchenko has fought. And let's just look at Shevchenko's last few opponents. Lauren Murphy, she's a bully, but not dangerous. Jessica Andrade is very dangerous, but not at this weight class. She was fighting up here. Jennifer Maia is 4-5 in the UFC with 8 decisions. And Caitlin Chikagian is only a decision fighter. And my point here isn't to make the case that Shevchenko is going to lose. I just want to emphasize that Taila Santos is very dangerous, and I do think the most dangerous fighter that Valentina Shevchenko has fought. I still think Valentina Shevchenko wins this fight, but there is a world where she doesn't and Taila has some success. So obviously Shevchenko is the pick here, but I'm actually hoping to see a little bit of a war and see some pressure, and I want to see Shevchenko get pushed here. Then we have the main event of the evening. We have Glover Teixeira taking on Jiri Prochazka in his very first UFC title defense. And I am going to start this off by saying I am incredibly biased. I have known Glover personally for a very long time. Like, we were in each other's top 5 MySpace friend thing. That's how long I've known him. We met in the early 2000s. I was coaching wrestling. His Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach was looking for a new space to train. And basically, the deal was, if you guys, me and the other wrestling coach, let us use the gym, you can train with us for free. So 15 years later, here we are. Glover's the UFC champion of the world, one of the nicest guys on planet Earth, and repping Connecticut to its fullest. And if you watch any of the UFC 275 promos, you will know just how decorated Glover Teixeira is in the UFC. He holds UFC records for both knockouts and submissions, and he has a Mike Tyson striking style, and he has incredible strength, and he uses his strength for his wrestling and his grappling. I say Mike Tyson striking style because he's got that tight guard and that bob and weave style, and then he just explodes over the top into combinations. Early in his career, he was known as a striker, who had a BJJ black belt. But lately, he's become a grappler who happens to have some striking. He took down Jan twice, Thiago Santos 4 times, and Anthony Smith once, all in fights that were stoppage wins because of Glover's grappling pressure. He's 42 years old, but somehow his chin has found a second life, and Glover Teixeira is the UFC light heavyweight champion of the world. Jiri Prochazka is an actual crazy person. He's incredibly fun to watch fight. He's a dangerous striker with pretty much all of his 28 wins coming by stoppage. He only has 2 fights in the UFC. That's it. 2 fights in the UFC, but both of them were spectacular second-round knockouts that earned him Fight of the Night bonuses. The knock on Jiri is how hittable he is. He is hit with almost 7 significant strikes per minute, which is an insanely high number, but his chin is rock solid, and he has no issues standing in the pocket and taking one to give one. He has been training with Henry Cejudo for this camp, and I imagine it's to help his grappling out as well, because he only has a 50% takedown defense, and Dominic Reyes, who is not a very good wrestler, had 0 issues getting Prochazka to the ground. Right now, Jiri is the 2-1 favorite, and I can understand why people like him in this fight, but I completely disagree. And yes, I mentioned I am biased. Like, I know Glover well, so I'm not going to pick against the guy, but if I take the bias out of it and you look at these 2 guys as fighters, look at their strengths and look at their weaknesses. If you look at their bodies of work, I just don't see Jiri as the winner. Anyone picking Jiri obviously thinks that he knocks Glover out and is expecting Glover's chin to be gone, especially at his age. But that was the exact same narrative for the Jan fight. And not only did Glover's chin not have any issues, he dropped Jan in that fight. Everyone remembers the submission, and even the UFC promos are talking about Glover's grappling, but the dude has hands. He hits like an absolute truck. He has 18 knockouts, and not to mention the fact that he averages more than 2 takedowns per fight in the UFC, and he has the record for most submission wins at light heavyweight. So yes, I am biased, but Glover has multiple paths to victory. He can win by knockout. He can win with his wrestling. He can win a decision. He can win by submission. And the only way I think Jiri Prochazka could possibly win this fight is by knockout. And he's very live for a knockout. That's what this man does. His chin holds up, and he's a very, very dangerous guy. But I'm going with the battle-tested veteran with multiple paths to victory here. I've got a moneyline bet on Glover at plus 170. And if you can't bet on your fights, who the hell are you going to bet on? But I genuinely, bias aside, think that Glover can win this fight. I think he will win this fight. I think it's set up for him, a guy that's very takedownable, a guy that's very hittable. Glover's chin is going to have me biting my nails the whole time, but I believe I'm rooting for him. I think he wins, and I did put my money where my mouth is. Guys, like, subscribe, do all the things. Let me know your picks below. Make sure you join our Tuesday night live streams, and make sure you join our free Discord. It costs $0. It's 100% free. There is a link in the description below, and as always, if you want $50 for free, all you need to do is go to wewantpicks.com/bets, sign up with any one of our 5 betting partners, make a deposit, and we send you $50 as a thank you.